unfair to Apple. This is a global economy. It's not Disneyland. There are things out there which are very unpleasant. Apple's just doing what every other company does. They're minimizing their costs to maximize their profit.
Sure. Look, I'm an Apple consumer. I love Apple, and my iPhone and my Mac and all that stuff is great. Apple set themselves up as an international leader. You know, they're one of the strongest companies in the world, and they've built that brand saying, we think different. And I just think they ought to be accountable to that, and they ought to actually be different from other companies that are doing this. And hopefully, if they can make a change, and that will have an impact down the line as well.
I guess at the end of the day, do you think that the people who are now signing your petition, are they willing to pay a little more, maybe substantially more, for their iPad, their iPod, or maybe their Mac?
You know, I don't know. I've read through a lot of the comments of people that signed, and it does say that, you know, many people have said, I would pay a little bit more if it meant that people were suffering less, or if there was, you know, a better chance for these people's lives to be improved. What I know is that Apple sold, you know, some 47 million iPhones during the holiday season. They posted billions of profits last quarter last year. They can afford, and they clearly have the creativity to make some changes here.
Yeah, well, since you brought the numbers up, let's look at those, because last year, for all of 2011, Apple sold 93 million iPhones and 40 million iPads. And if we look at your petition so far, I know it's only been up for just over a week. You have 160,000 signatures, which is substantial in and of itself. But aren't you right now essentially fighting an uphill battle, I guess? Again,
I hope that by appealing to Apple's brand and saying, you know, this is the company that thinks different and that Steve Jobs built, and, you know, their ad that says, you know, the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that ultimately do. I hope that that company listens to this outcry of, you know, admittedly a small but growing number of petition signers and a growing amount of media coverage saying, this is ridiculous. This is not what people think of when they're buying their iPhones. They don't think about Chinese workers that are putting in so many hours doing repetitive motions that they lose the use of their hands for their whole lives, and that suicide rates are so bad at these factories that they've got to hang nets outside so that when people jump off the top of the building, they're caught.
The Apple CEO, Tim Cook, he responded to some of these allegations in an email to staff, and in part he said, any suggestion that we don't care is patently false and offensive to us. As you know better than anyone else, this is to the staff, accusations like these are contrary to our values. Now, isn't that really enough? What else would you like Apple to do?
Well, again, there's some pretty specific asks in the petition, and I think that they're fairly pragmatic. We would like to see some transparency in the reporting that they do on their own manufacturing systems, particularly when there's a new product launch, which is when the injuries and the suicides tend to spike. I think that we'd also like to see, you know, basic rotations for the factory workers, so that those repetitive motion injuries aren't happening at the same rate, and people, you know, aren't injured as much. I think that we're asking for pretty actually basic things that could make big changes without costing Apple a whole lot.
And finally, for anybody who wants to sign your petition, where can they go?
Just go to change.org. It's the top petition on change.org right now, and there's 163 people that have signed, 163,000 people that have signed so far, and we'd love to see more numbers growing there.